Most people are afraid of being alone. Not just physically alone, but mentally alone. The moment there's no noise, no conversation, no distraction, something feels off. So they fill their lives with people, attention, and constant interaction, just to avoid facing themselves. And because of that, they confuse loneliness with weakness. But what if being alone isn't weakness at all? What if it's something else entirely? There's a type of person who doesn't follow the same pattern. He doesn't chase attention, he doesn't depend on people to feel complete, and he doesn't feel the need to be understood by everyone. Most people look at him and think, he's a lone wolf, quiet, distant, maybe even disconnected. But that's only what they see on the surface. Because what looks like isolation is often control. While others are constantly reacting, seeking validation, and adjusting themselves to fit in, he's doing something different. He's observing, thinking, understanding. He's building a mindset that doesn't rely on external noise. And over time, that creates something most people don't have: inner strength. The kind that doesn't break under pressure. The kind that doesn't depend on approval. The kind that allows you to stand alone without feeling lost. And that's where the question begins. Is he really a lone wolf? Or is he just operating at a level most people don't understand? Because being alone doesn't always mean you're disconnected. Sometimes it means you're focused. Sometimes it means you're selective. And sometimes it means you're strong enough not to need constant connection. The Sigma male lives in that space. He can be around people, but he doesn't need them. He can stay silent, but he understands everything. He can walk away, not because he's weak, but because he knows his value. And that's what makes him different. Not louder, not more visible, but harder to read and harder to influence. If this way of thinking speaks to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content on psychology, mindset, and human behavior that most people never understand. Because once you start seeing things like this, you don't go back. And now, let me ask you something. Do you think being a lone wolf is a sign of weakness? Or is it actually a hidden form of strength most people never develop? He is alone by choice, not by weakness. Most people assume that being alone means something is wrong, like it's a sign of rejection or failure, so they do everything they can to avoid it. They stay around people who don't understand them, force conversations that don't feel natural, and hold on to relationships that don't add value, just to avoid silence. But the Sigma male sees things differently, because when he is alone, it's not because he has no options, it's because he made a decision. He chooses who deserves his time, who deserves his energy, and who deserves access to his life. And if something doesn't align with him, he has no problem stepping away, even if that means standing alone. That's not weakness, that's control, because being alone by choice means you're not dependent on people to feel complete. You're not staying out of fear, and you're not chasing connections just to avoid loneliness. Your stability comes from within, not from others, and that changes how you move in life. Most people tolerate things they shouldn't tolerate just to keep people around. They ignore disrespect, accept less than they deserve, and slowly lose themselves in the process. But the Sigma male understands that being alone is better than being in the wrong environment, so he chooses quality over quantity every time. He would rather have a small circle that truly aligns with him than a large one that drains him, and if that means spending time alone, he's completely comfortable with it. Because for him, solitude is not empty, it's peaceful, it's a space where he can think clearly, reflect, and understand himself better. And over time, that creates something powerful: independence. He learns how to make decisions on his own, how to trust his judgment, and how to move without needing constant approval or guidance from others. There's also a deeper level to this, because when you're alone by choice, you develop a kind of confidence most people don't have. Not the loud type that seeks attention, but the quiet type that feels stable and grounded. You don't need people to tell you who you are. You don't need constant interaction to feel valued. And you don't depend on external validation to feel confident. That kind of self-awareness makes you different, and people can feel it even if they don't understand it. They notice that you're not desperate for attention, that you're not trying to be everywhere, and that you're not afraid to stand alone. And that creates respect, because someone who chooses solitude over low-value connections shows that he has standards. The Sigma male doesn't isolate himself from the world. He simply refuses to depend on it. He connects when it makes sense. He engages when it aligns. But he never loses himself just to fit in. And that's what makes him strong in a way most people never reach. He builds strength in silence. Most people feel the need to show everything they're doing. They talk about their goals, announce their plans, and share every small step as if progress only matters when it's seen. It gives them attention, but it also creates pressure and distraction because they become focused on reactions instead of results. But the Sigma male doesn't move like that. He doesn't feel the need to prove anything while he's still building, and he doesn't rely on people watching him to stay motivated. Instead, he works in silence, without announcements, without showing off, and without needing recognition. While others are talking, he's improving. He's building his mindset, his discipline, and his skills without needing an audience. And that's where real strength is created, not in public, but in private. Because when no one is watching, there is no pressure to perform, only the choice to be consistent. And that consistency builds something deeper than temporary motivation. It builds discipline. He shows up even when it's difficult, even when there's no reward, and even when nobody notices. And that's what separates him from most people. At first, it looks like nothing is happening. There's no visible change, no recognition, and no external validation. But over time, those quiet efforts start to grow. Skills get sharper, mindset becomes stronger, and results begin to appear. And when they do, they speak louder than anything he could have said. Because people didn't see the process, they only see the outcome, and that creates impact. There's also control in this mindset. When you move in silence, you protect your focus. You're not distracted by opinions, you're not influenced by expectations, and you're not pressured to deliver results for others. You move at your own pace, in your own direction, and that gives you an advantage. Because while others are seeking attention, you're building something real. People notice that difference. They see that you're not just talking, you're actually doing. They see progress without explanation, and that creates respect. Because in a world full of noise, the one who moves quietly stands out. The Sigma male doesn't stay silent because he has nothing to say. He stays silent because he understands that results will speak for him. And once you start moving like that, everything changes. You stop chasing attention, you stop needing recognition, and you start focusing on becoming better. And over time, that quiet growth turns into visible strength, the kind that doesn't need to be announced, because it's already clear to anyone who pays attention. He doesn't need to be understood by everyone. Most people spend a big part of their lives trying to explain themselves. They want others to understand their choices, their mindset, and the way they see the world. So they talk more, justify their actions, and try to make everything clear. And when people don't understand them, they feel frustrated, like they need to prove something or correct how they are seen. But the Sigma male doesn't move like that. He understands something most people ignore. Not everyone is meant to understand you. So instead of explaining himself all the time, he accepts it. He knows that people see things based on their own experience, their own mindset, and their own level of awareness. And no matter how much you explain, some people will still misunderstand you. So he doesn't waste his energy trying to be understood by everyone. That creates freedom, because when you stop trying to explain everything, you stop overthinking every move. You stop worrying about how people will interpret your decisions, and you stop adjusting yourself just to fit into their expectations. You move based on what makes sense to you, not on what makes sense to others. There's also confidence in this mindset. The Sigma male doesn't need external agreement to feel secure in his decisions. He trusts his judgment, even when others don't see things the same way. And that makes him stable, because his identity is not built on other people's understanding. People might call him distant, quiet, or even strange at times. They may not understand why he makes certain choices, why he moves the way he does, or why he doesn't follow the same patterns as everyone else. But that doesn't shake him, because he's not looking for approval. And over time, that creates respect. Because even if people don't fully understand him, they can feel that he's sure of himself. He's not changing to fit in, and he's not explaining himself just to be accepted. And that level of certainty stands out. The Sigma mindset is not about disconnecting from people. It's about not depending on their understanding to move forward. He can listen, he can consider, but he doesn't lose himself trying to match everyone else's expectations. And once you reach that level, everything becomes simpler. You don't feel the need to prove who you are. You don't feel pressured to explain every decision. And you don't waste time trying to be understood by people who are not on the same level. You just move. And that quiet certainty becomes your strength. Because in the end, you don't need everyone to understand you. You only need to understand yourself. He observes people instead of following them. Most people move with the crowd without even realizing it. They follow trends, repeat opinions, and act based on what everyone else is doing. It feels safe, it feels normal, and it keeps them from standing out too much. But at the same time, it limits how much they actually understand the world around them. Because when you're always following, you're not really thinking. But the Sigma male moves differently. He steps back and observes. Instead of jumping into everything, he watches. He pays attention to how people act, how they react under pressure, and how they change depending on the situation. He notices patterns that most people ignore, and over time, that gives him a deeper understanding of human behavior. He doesn't just see what people say, he sees how they say it. He notices tone, body language, and small details that reveal what's really going on beneath the surface. And that awareness allows him to move smarter, because he's not reacting blindly, he's responding with understanding. There's also control in this mindset. When you observe more than you follow, you're not easily influenced. You don't get pulled into trends just because they're popular, and you don't adopt ideas without questioning them. You take your time, you think, and you decide what actually makes sense for you. That independence creates strength, because you're not just copying what others are doing, you're creating your own way of moving. And that makes you different in a way that people can feel, even if they can't explain it. People notice that you're not easily influenced, that you're not reacting like everyone else, and that you're paying attention. And that creates a certain level of respect, because awareness is rare. Most people move without thinking, but the one who observes sees more. The Sigma male doesn't follow blindly. He learns, he understands, and then he chooses. And that choice gives him control over his direction, because he's not being pushed by the crowd, he's moving based on his own understanding. And over time, that creates clarity. You start seeing things others miss, you start understanding people on a deeper level, and you stop being surprised by situations that confuse others, because you've been paying attention all along. The Sigma mindset is not about rejecting everything, it's about thinking for yourself. It's about observing first, understanding second, and acting last. And once you start moving like that, everything changes. You don't just follow the world around you, you understand it. And that's where real strength begins. He finds peace in solitude, not loneliness. Most people see being alone as something negative, something to avoid. The moment they're by themselves, they feel uncomfortable, like something is missing, so they rush to fill that space with noise, people, or distractions. They confuse silence with emptiness, and because of that, they never learn how to be at peace with themselves. But the Sigma male experiences solitude differently. For him, being alone is not a problem to fix, it's a state he values. It's where his mind becomes clear, where there's no pressure to perform, no expectations to meet, and no noise to distract him. It's a space where he can think, reflect, and reset without interference. He doesn't feel lonely, he feels focused. That's the difference. While others need constant interaction to feel okay, he uses solitude to build himself. He reflects on his decisions, understands his patterns, and improves without needing anyone to guide him. And over time, that creates a deep level of self-awareness most people never reach. There's also stability in this mindset. When you find peace in solitude, you stop depending on others for your emotional state. You don't need constant attention, you don't need to be surrounded by people, and you don't need validation to feel good. Your peace comes from within, and that makes you grounded. That grounded energy is powerful. People notice it. They see that you're calm, that you're not desperate for connection, and that you're comfortable in your own space. And that creates a presence that feels different, because someone who is at peace alone doesn't move with need. He doesn't chase people just to avoid loneliness. He doesn't stay in situations that drain him, and he doesn't compromise his standards just to feel connected. He chooses relationships that add value, not ones that fill a void. There's also freedom in this. When you're not afraid of being alone, you become harder to control. People can't manipulate you through emotional attachment, and they can't pressure you into staying where you don't belong. You move freely because you're not afraid to walk away. The Sigma mindset is not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about being complete within yourself. It's about being able to stand alone without feeling lost. And once you reach that level, everything changes. You don't see solitude as something negative. You see it as your advantage. Because in that space, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. and that's where your real strength begins. So now you see the truth. What people call a lone wolf is not always someone who is disconnected. It's often someone who is focused, selective, and strong enough to stand on his own. While most people depend on noise, attention, and constant connection, the Sigma builds himself in silence, understands himself deeply, and moves with clarity. And that difference is exactly what turns solitude into strength. The reality is, most people will hear this and go back to the same habits. They'll keep chasing connection, seeking validation, and avoiding being alone. But a small percentage will understand it. They'll start using solitude to think and to become stronger. And over time, they won't feel alone anymore. They'll feel in control. If this made you see things differently, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content on psychology, mindset, and self-development that most people never pay attention to. Because once you start thinking like this, you don't go back. And now I want you to be honest. Do you see yourself as a lone wolf because you have no choice, or because you've chosen a different path than most people? Drop your answer in the comments. I read everything, and I reply to as many of you as I can.